Hi, this is Karen, and you're listening to the SAP Security and GRC podcast with host Dudley Cartwright, helping you on your journey to effective access risk management in SAP. In today's episode, we'll guide you through the layers of the Effective GRC Pyramid, a powerful framework outlining the essential components necessary for effective GRC. We'll be joined by industry experts Meindert Keuning from Bright and Emile Steyn from Soterion. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. For the first time, we've got Meindert Keuning. So, Meindert, thank you very much for joining us. Maybe you can just spend a few minutes just telling us a little bit about yourself and also a little bit about the Bright, the company you're working for.
Yeah, thank you, Dudley. Very welcome at the show. My name is Meindert Keuning. I've gained 20 years of experience in the areas of SAP and SAP Control, SAP Security, mainly achieved within the KPMG. We're living in the Netherlands. And I work with Bright. Bright is a company who implements technology in the area of digital control. And next to the implementation of technologies, we also do professional services with specialists, and we manage the service for our clients to stay in control.
Good. Okay. So I think to begin with, I just want to give a little bit of background about what do we mean by effective GRC before we hand over to Emile and Meindert. A lot of companies possibly have implemented an access control solution, but they might find that there's a high amount or it's heavily underutilized. There's very little involvement from the business users. Often those type of solutions are often just used by the IT teams more as back-end solutions for periodic assessments. Some companies might only be using the access control solution just for firefighter type functionality. You also find that a lot of companies, if they've got challenges with their SAP security, maybe a few bad audit reports, they often will go out and say, listen, let's go and buy an access control solution and implement that, and that's going to be the silver bullet and fix all our problems. Implementing an access control solution that's a good fit for your environment is one very important piece of the puzzle, but it is only one piece of the puzzle. We do need to look at GRC more holistically, and there's a lot of other aspects or components that need to be performed and need to be performed well in order for the organization to, extract maximum value from the GRC investment. We like to use or make use of what we refer to as the Effective GRC Pyramid, to try and illustrate or articulate what are the various sort of components that need to be considered when looking at your GRC framework and ensuring that you're going to, obviously implement something that's fit for purpose and actually adds value to the organization. So I'll just quickly talk through each of the components before I hand over, and we'll spend take a bit more time looking at each of those in a bit more detail with Emile and Meindert today. So for those listening to this podcast, you won't see the visuals of this, but at the base of the Effective GRC Pyramid, we've got policies and procedures. The layer or level above that will be the SAP role design. The level above that will be the access control or GRC solution. A level above that will be your rule set. And at the top of the pyramid, we have the internal processes. We at Soterion like to try and encourage our clients or customers to measure how effective your GRC is by how well your business users are performing their access risk management activities. Are your business users performing those activities with an understanding of what they're doing and with intent? Or are they doing it with no understanding, but they're doing it more just to tick an audit box? They don't know why they're doing it, but they just want to tell audit that they're doing it. In the latter case there, you may have an access control solution. You may be performing the tasks, but it's not effective. It's not adding much value to the organization. So I think a lot of what we're going to try and talk about today is how do you implement these processes and these solutions that it actually adds value to the organization, and you're not just doing these activities just to say you're doing them, but they're not adding value to the organization. So just before I hand over, I think this Effective GRC Pyramid, we use it quite a bit in our proposals, in our in our roadmap reports, etc. Emile, maybe I'll start with you. So looking at the base of the pyramid, policies, procedures, we have gone and done a sort of podcast dedicated specifically to that, but maybe you can just give us your thoughts on, what do we mean by policy procedures and why is it important?
Thanks, Dudley. So I think policies and procedures, first of all, it's an item that many people underestimate the value that can bring to your organization. So effectively, the policies and procedures dictate how you will use and implement every layer of the GRC pyramid. So if we think about the role design, your policies and procedures can dictate not only the design of that, but also the continuous maintenance, how those changes are implemented into your organization. The policies and procedures can dictate how your GRC software is used. How is it used for access control solution or for access request processes? How can your GRC solution assist with your firefighter process? And the policies and procedures need to outline all the steps to make sure that companies are actually utilizing and implementing those controls. That's when you see the underutilization of the software, rule sets not being updated, processes not running according to what has been designed, and you will also then, if the procedures and policies that have been set up not followed, if we speak maybe more specific to the role design, you'll quickly see how role design can deteriorate those design rules that have been specified is not followed.
Thanks for that. So, Meindert, maybe coming to you, what we've found, and I don't know if you will have found this too, agree with us, is that a lot of organizations have got policies and procedures defined, but a lot of the time they're outdated and they will go and implement an access control solution or GRC solution. So a lot of the processes have changed. The provisioning process changed, or this SAP access request management process changes, and they haven't gone back and updated those policies and procedures to take into account the new process, because they've implemented a solution that will perform some of those functions. And there's now workflow, and there's various activities that need to be done. What have you seen in this space? A lot of companies having policies and procedures but just outdated, or a lot of companies not even having up-to-date policies and procedures at all?
Dudley, I think that if you look at the problem we are facing and we're discussing now, is that the majority of the companies know the importance of having the security in place in SAP. And on the other hand, it's no one's hobby. So what you see is that basically all the CFOs are struggling with audit findings here and there, while they have a quite high spend on people who are maintaining it. So the question is a little bit, why is it then not effective? If you have the procedures in place and you have technology there? I think that's basically the question. And I think that's also the existence of Bright is primarily in that area, because we want to be between the technology providers and between the business consultants. And the question is, how can you use your technology more effective in a way that it really adds value? And what we see in the market is that technology is bought, is used, but is not implemented in the way how it should be used. And in combination with the fact that procedures are just on paper and are not integrated within the GRC tooling, you see that people are not enforced to use that procedure. And that's basically, I think, the fact that the effectiveness of the whole security concept is quite low in comparison to all the investment what's done within the company.
Yeah, and I think the function that Bright perform there, where they sit between the technology provider and also the company, is such an important sort of function to assist the client with, because a lot of the time these solutions are implemented, but then the vendor might walk away, and then the client just doesn't know what the solution can do, or how can it help them. So you're often that's a lot of the time where you end up with that underutilization. Moving on then, if we go to the next layer or level, when we talk about the SAP role design, Emile, we used to say that this was the foundation of all things GRC. If you don't have a strong or robust SAP role design, if it's providing users with very inappropriate access, it doesn't matter how good the access control solution is, it doesn't matter how good the rule set is, etc. You're just not going to be able to manage your risk effectively. So again, I'll open this up to both of you. When we look at the importance of the role design, what are some of the considerations that a company needs to look at to make sure that their role design is going to support all the other sort of GRC activities that need to be done?
I think what's important when you design your roles, you must make sure that it will allow you to address items that's most important to you. If security is very important to you, your roles need to be able to facilitate that. If there's risk remediation that needs to occur, then you need to be able to do that easily with the roles that you've built. If the roles are big roles, it's assigned to many different users, that complicates that remediation. If efficiency is your highest priority, then your roles must be built in such a way that it is easy to identify what's the correct access for a user and potentially look at automating that access assignment. So that's particularly where something like a business role comes in, like designing a business role that is accurately designed for the users that's meant to be using that underlying access. That is a close match. If your roles can't address that, it means that you either need to relook your roles, either redesign or clean it up so that it will allow you to achieve those objectives.
Yeah, I guess also when you're looking at the SAP role design, you also maybe need to consider it from not only the SAP single role level, but also how are those roles going to be rolled up, into the business role or the composite role. So there may be the consideration for saying, are our single roles in good shape? And if they are, maybe the consideration or the effort just needs to go into looking at the mapping of those to the users, whether that's via a business role or composite role, and maybe just a business role re-engineering exercise. Meindert, would you like to comment on what you're seeing there and the work you guys are doing with assisting the clients with addressing the SAP roles?
Yeah, I've been involved in large authorization implementations the last 20 years, and what I see is a couple of things. Is that usually when our SAP implementations, then you see that SAP security has no priority. But in the go live, you see that the system integrator usually assign large roles to be able to go live as sweet as possible. Basically, the standard SAP roles are used to that extent. So that's basically one. And secondly, what we see is that also the concept of authorization is not applied correctly in a way that you're not quite flexible in assigning those. And when you're not, if the foundation is not okay, then at the end you will be struggling in how to assign proper roles to end users without having SODs. So that are the two major things. And what you see in the last years is that in the past we made template roles and we derived them for each of all companies. So that costs you a lot of detailed roles. And what you now see with the new concept with value roles, let's say, is that you also see that the maintainability of the SAP roles is much less. And that's where we helped our clients last year in redesign, but also optimize and make sure that the maintenance of roles is much less than it were in the past with deriving all the roles.
I think what you touch on there is so important. We often try and sort of articulate to a company and say a lot of the effort in the role build should be prior to the upfront before go live. Trying to fix authorizations, post go live or retro fix the solution is always incredibly difficult. And what you mentioned there, Meindert, is just putting in many different role methodologies that you can use, and these huge debates about which ones are better, etc. So we obviously won't go into that now, but a lot of the time what you're saying there is if you can articulate to the client which methodology will take the least effort in order to support, it's a huge consideration, because I do think a lot of the bigger sort of system integrators will do an implementation and there's no consideration for the support burden on the client once they leave after the go live intensive care phase. So I like the fact that what you mentioning there is when you're talking to the client, it's talking about not only an appropriate role design, but also what is going to be a role methodology that's going to result in the least effort to support post go live. And I think that's a huge consideration, especially as we move to S4 and with the introduction of Fury, etc. Everything is becoming so much more technical, so much more complex, that implementing something that's a solution that is not going to be too much of a support burden is going to be a huge or crucial consideration for the organization. So the layer above it in the pyramid then is looking at the access control solution. We've always said that, listen, there are many access control solutions on the market. It's good to find one that's a good fit for a particular environment. Emile, I won't go to you this time. Meindert, maybe I'll just go to you. When you sort of advising the client as to what are some of the considerations they must think about when they are looking for an access control solution? How do they compare against the others, and what are some of the considerations for that they must think about when they do choose a solution?
We sell several solutions on SAP GRC. Soterion is definitely one of the most sold, and the reason, and that's what's very important to us, is that if you look at the client needs, it's very important that they choose the technology what fits their organization, but also fits their architecture. And what we usually do is help them in selecting the right technology. And only the price is a very bad only alternative to select the technology. What you also see is that areas like maintainability, but also the operational cost in conversion after go live, should also take into account. Because if you look at competitors of Soterion, you see that the purchase can be less, but the maintenance costs are much higher. And what you also see is that also things you should think about is, can the technology fit our architecture of the SAP authorizations? If you work with business rules, for example, is all technology able to cover that? If you want to connect to your single point of truth, for example, to SailPoint or any other technology, is your technology able to do it? And the last one, I think, and that's also a very important thing, if you really want to have a benefit of using technology, and to what extent can it automate your policies and procedures and your IT general controls, like your firefighting, like the review of access rights, the review of roles, the review of SODs and risks. So now several aspects what you should consider before you buy a tool, and that is, to my extent, what usually goes wrong at the start. And that price is so important that they don't look at all the alternatives, and after a while they're not really happy with what they have.
Yeah. So I think, we don't want to sit here punting software from our side, but I think we just try not to, explain to customers and say, listen, look for a solution that's a good fit for your environment. Understand what your internal skill set is, what is your GRC maturity, etc. What are your needs? And then look for a solution that fits that requirement. Because I think sometimes, as you mentioned, some of the bigger, more complex solutions are sometimes implemented, and the client just doesn't have the necessary internal capability to derive value from it. So it ends up being heavily underutilized, a lot of frustration, just trying to get it to work. Emile, anything you want to add to that?
Dudley, I think, what we often mention is that companies already has a solution, that's underutilized, but also to try and explain the value that a GRC solution can bring to a company. So there's lots of companies that do a lot of stuff manually, and they need to understand, what's the value that the solution can bring. So it's to explain to them that a GRC or a solution is not only, there to report on risk and make your life difficult. It's also the enabler that will allow you to do a lot more things more efficiently. So if they are doing user access reviews or role reviews that Meindert mentioned them manually. Something that takes a lot of time, not only for the administrators, but then also for the reviewers, simply not getting any value. So I think that's often where we see is the companies that doesn't have a solution. Often the people that don't understand the value that the solution can bring, and that's what needs to be explained. There's value basically in all the layers that the GRC software can bring. The role design, keeping your roles clean, all layers, yes.
So it's not only about reporting on risk, but it's also how can it improve the efficiencies of some of the compliance or access risk management activities, because obviously that's taking up a lot of time of business users to perform those, and can the GRC or access control solution automate a lot of those functions?
And Dudley, and if I may add, I think one important area is also that at the end, security and authorizations and SODs is a business responsibility. And that's also what I add to the discussion, because usually see that IT is responsible for maintaining it. And at the end, I think good GRC software pushes responsibility of the maintenance, but also the decisions and the risk assessment, etc. It pushes to the business itself. And secondly, if you want to reduce the cost on IT, then the only thing is what you can do is push responsibility to business and use technology that business is able to do it themselves. And I think that's also important in the selection criteria once you want to choose the right technology.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. And I think what you mentioned there, a lot of companies struggle with that, where it's such a difficult space that we're in, where it's so technical, it's so complex. When you look at SAP authorizations, transaction codes, authorization objects, authorization fields, SOD risks, etc. It's such a technical space, but yet it's the business users, as you correctly say there, that are the rightful owners of the that information. They should be the decision makers of that. So trying to bridge that gap between that technical side and getting the business to become the rightful owners of it and become accountable is obviously a huge challenge that companies need to try and figure out. And I suppose with the likes of your Bright and your consulting and advisory capabilities, that's very much what you guys will do. Once the client has identified or the company has identified an access control solution that's a good fit for the environment, all these access control GRC solutions come with the standard out-the-box or predefined rule sets. So the next layer in the pyramid is about customizing or configuring the rule set. Meindert, I must probably start with you, because we have always been quite surprised with how many companies still use the vendor's out-the-box rule set. Even 3-4 years later, they're still using the vendor's out-the-box rule set. And although those out-the-box rule sets will still be very good and will still cover a vast majority of the client's risk, there is still a lot of risks that may be in that out-the-box rule set that's not a risk to the organization, so that they are reporting on stuff that's not really a risk to them. Obviously, they haven't added any of their custom transaction codes, etc. Is it a function that you are sort of encouraging your clients to look at, and what are the reasons you're telling them to look at that rule set customization activity?
Yeah, you're right, Dudley. I think first of all, I would say that the rule set delivered Soterion is a very good rule set, and also used with the Big Four. So the out of the box is a very good starting point, let's say. But I think there are 3 points which are important to consider. And the first one is that you always have to tailor the rule set to your own company needs. Your company can have specific transactions for the company, like the Z transactions, for example, or other transactions which are important to the company and not in the standard rule set. So that is one. Secondly, maintenance of the rule set should also be part of your change management procedure. For example, once you have a change in SAP and it impacts also the functionality of transactions, you should also consider how does it impact my rule set. And I think the last one is also when you have changes within your organizations, a new entity, you're implementing new technology like Fiori, or you go to HANA or do an upgrade, always the SAP security should always be part of that project. And it should also be a separate stream with sufficient budget and maintenance and attention. Otherwise, within a few months, you're back where you were. That's it.
Yeah. So, Emile, maybe just then to ask you to add on to that, because I know from a Soterion perspective, we also promote the idea of the rule set customization, not only to ensure that the rule set becomes more relevant to the organization based on their specific business processes, etc. But the education process of the rule set customization is, we feel, is such a vital or such a value add activity, where you sit with certain users from business in a workshop and you articulate or explain every SOD risk, and you discuss it, you debate it. And there's a huge amount of education that happens through that rule set customization project. And the more you educate the business users, the more they understand. The more likely they are to take ownership. Emile, do you want to just comment on that?
Yeah, Dudley, you mentioned a big part of that, is once business has agreed to it and they understand what they're actually looking at, that has a big knock-on effect on all of the other activities they need to perform, because it's typically those same users that agree to those risks that's responsible for reviewing access requests or doing the user access review. It means when those items come in, they know exactly what that risk means. There's no one needs to explain it to them. They don't need to pass this to IT to explain to them what this actually means, because that's the risk that they actually agree to. They already know which controls they've got implemented for that if it's not being documented. But so that it just allows them to take a lot of quick decisions, and they know exactly who in the organization is actually meant to be doing that. So it's much easier for them to actually to make decisions once they know what the tool is reporting on is the stuff that's important to them.
Yeah. Then moving up the pyramid, at the top of the pyramid, we've just got the internal processes. So this will just now be, what are the various compliance tasks? What are the workflow routes, etc.? How's that been set up? We always been vocal about saying, please keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't have too many steps in your workflow paths. The more complex it is, the more areas that it can fall over or just not be done. And we often say then, measure how effective your GRC is by how well those business users are performing their various sort of compliance tasks. Now, whether that's just reviewing and approving all SAP access change requests, whether you as a company need to perform user access reviews, the reviewing of firefighter logs, etc. Whatever those compliance tasks are those being performed efficiently, and they've been performed by the business users with an understanding or with intent. Meindert, do you want to just comment anything on that? Are you advising in your space about some of those processes and how they should be done?
I think that what we talked about before was more about technology and about the details, I would say. And this one is the organizational governance. And the organizational governance is, I think, the proof of the pudding on the stay clean part. So several aspects are, to my extent, very important in that area. And that the first one, for example, if I may, is the governance and operating model. So the question is, who is going to maintain? And that's one. And secondly, are all roles and responsibilities within the organization well assigned? And all roles and responsibilities is about who will be approving roles, who will be approving risks. That's one. That is the business side. But also we will request users. So that's the business side. At the IT side, let's say, people should also you should also appoint persons who can maintain the authorizations. And the question is, it is so complex, but you also don't need so many in an organization. So the question is, do you want to rely on one, let's say, or two, or are you going to outsource it to a party who's able to manage it for you? So there are different governance and operating challenges and things you have to think upfront to ensure that the responsibilities are well assigned.
So I think, we just mentioned there the ongoing maintenance of it. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think as we moved, to S4 and the introduction of Fury and all that, a lot of these activities on maintaining an authorization solution, ensuring that it stays clean, is becoming, a lot more challenging. So it is an area that we believe that lends itself very well to, sort of be outsourced and be provided by a service provider, maybe like an entity like Bright that can perform it as a managed service offering. So you are performing that function for a number of clients. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's not because of luxury. Let's say what you see, and that's what I saw the last 20 years, is that the system integrators are very good in implementing SAP. So basically, we're already asked to do the security part in projects. And at a given moment, I thought, why are companies struggling so with authorizations? And one of the conclusions was, they have hardly people available. The technology is going so fast. Within the R3 times, you could 20 or 15 years with the R3 system, but now you get February, you get a new SAP module in it. So it goes so fast and the persons who can do are hardly available. So bringing it all together made us offering the service, the Stay Clean as a service, in which we manage the security part of our clients. And it's not only the maintenance of roles and authorizations, but it's also by providing, for example, the audit role, audit reports. And so we liaise with the external auditor. So we basically help our clients not only by doing the details, but also by providing them assurance on that everything is managed well.
Good. I think that sort of covers everything we wanted to cover then in the, with the effective GRC pyramid and all the components of that. So maybe just to summarize, you've got to consider at the base of the pyramid your policies and procedures. You've also got to look at your role design. You've got to look at implementing an access control solution that's a good fit for your environment. You've got to customize the rule set to make it more relevant, specific to your organizational needs. And then you've also got to implement the internal processes and introduce the compliance activities and tasks that not only audit are expecting you to do, but also, that it is required by you as an organization to ensure that you are managing your risk effectively. And I think with many of those layers that we spoke about, Meindert from Bright, they can assist in many of those, assist with policy procedure documentation, assist with role redesigns, role cleanups, etc., assist with sort of access control vendor selection, assist with rule set customization, etc. So is there anything, Meindert, in conclusion that you think we've missed out or that should also be mentioned?
I think we covered the majority of the areas what should be implemented to stay clean. A lot of clients ask me where to start. I have a lot of audit findings and where to start. And probably I can close the podcast with where to start. And what we usually do is if there are so many doubts and audit findings, we start with a kind of assessment. And with the assessment, we get clear the pain areas, let's say the risk areas, and we try to do a root cause analysis. And once we have done the assessment, then we try to get clean and get compliant. And in that we do remediation of the quick wins, and we design the improvement opportunities. And it's also the phase that we start selecting the right technology and that we implement the pyramid what we have discussed today. And the last phase, let's say, is to embed all those things in and to stay clean. And stay clean is implementing all the pyramid into the organization. And the last one is that you have to manage the authorization, the maintenance of it, and the operating model. And that's a little bit how we try to structure challenges like these. And don't underestimate, I would say. And it takes you half a year. And you're not the only company who starts with a payment run in the display all access. So I would say start with an assessment and take it up from there. But don't underestimate. But at the end, we will make it.
Meindert, what you say there, just doing that assessment just to get the starting point, the as-is situation is vital. And then, the likes of Bright will be able to put a roadmap together for you and then just explain all the activities that still need to be done. I think it's important view your GRC journey or your GRC activities as a journey. It can't be done overnight. It might take you 1 year, 2 years until you've got all of it. But just start somewhere. Start with that assessment that Meindert says, and then you can look at what activities you do in year 1, what activities do you do in year 2, but just view it as a journey. It can't be done overnight. Good. Guys, thank you very much for that. Emile, thank you for joining. Meindert, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great hearing your thoughts and your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
It was a pleasure to me. Thank you.